So welcome. I am Dr. Denise Compton. I'm a psychologist here at UAMS at the Institute on Aging. And this is an introductory talk about mindfulness meditation in particular. And after the kind of introductory remarks, then we will do an introductory mindfulness meditation practice. So here we do a form of meditation that was developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And this is his definition of mindfulness. It is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So this kind of attention, developed through the practice of meditation, nurtures greater awareness, and that's self-awareness usually, clarity, and acceptance of what's happening in the present moment. So what is meditation? It is a practice during which we choose an anchor for our attention. For example, a breathing exercise. And we sit with the intention to focus our attention on that chosen anchor. When our minds wander, which they definitely will do, we simply notice without judgment and then gently return our attention to that chosen anchor. So we try to avoid fussing at ourselves and telling ourselves we're doing it wrong when our minds wander. We accept the fact that that's just normal. And when it wanders, we're curious about where our minds go off to, and then we come back to our anchor. And that's really all there is to it. It is fairly simple, but it's not very easy. And that's why we call it a practice. We never really arrive somewhere at a state of bliss or nirvana or whatever. We are practicing. So we are avoiding the unrealistic expectation that we're going to completely clear our minds of all thoughts. That is not our goal. We're just practicing that skill of focusing our attention according to our choice, and increasing our awareness of what our minds do spontaneously, just in the here and now. So Andrew Weil, kind of a famous teacher of meditation, says, then repeat 10,000 times, just emphasizing the point of practice. So there are lots of forms of meditation, thousands of forms of meditation. Here we just have a list of a few that are often used. So another way of saying that is these are different kinds of things that can be used as the anchor to which we're going to choose to pay attention during the meditation practice. And over the course of several weeks, we will experiment with, I'll introduce and you'll have an opportunity to experiment with a number of these different forms. So then Jon Kabat-Zinn puts together the ideas of mindfulness and meditation and develops his own particular approach. So he was a PhD in molecular biology at MIT and also a student of meditation. And he decided that he really wanted to reach out to the healthcare community because he felt this was an area where mindfulness meditation might have the greatest impact. And this is a quote from him. He says, "Hospitals and medical centers are magnets for suffering. So it is very natural to introduce programs to help people deal with the enormity of their suffering in a systematic way as a complement to medical efforts." So he persuaded the University of Massachusetts Medical Center to let him set up what he called a self-care training program that would be targeted to patients with chronic disorders, particularly chronic pain. And he says this, "I bent over backward to structure it and find ways to speak about it that avoided as much as possible the risk of it being seen as Buddhist, New Age, Eastern mysticism, or just plain flaky. To my mind, this was a constant and serious risk that would have undermined our attempts to present it as a commonsensical, evidence-based, ordinary, and ultimately legitimate element of mainstream medical care." Then he goes on to say, much of the suffering associated with illness lies in the attitude one brings to one's condition. If this could be improved through practices that involve recognizing and accepting here meaning owning, one's experience without reactivity and judgment, it might result in marked reduction in various symptoms, especially pain and anxiety. Patients may still have a medical condition that needs medical management, but they might nevertheless be relieved of mental suffering, of anxiety, excessive self-criticism or judgment, and the catastrophizing of pain itself. So mental transformation occurs in ways that facilitate more adaptive coping. And there's been actually a lot of research on mindfulness meditation over the last several years, and Clinical Psychology Review actually undertook a major review of that research literature and kind of condensed it down or boiled it down to the main benefits, and these are them. Reduced anxiety, depression, anger, and just general distress or stress, and improved positive emotions and quality of life. Even more particularly, there's been quite a large body of research with cancer patients that demonstrated similar results, diminished anxiety, depression, and stress. However, we also have to say that those are the things they studied the most, so that would be the things they found the most. Additional benefits: reductions in sleep disturbance and fatigue, improved energy, reduction in physical pain, and changes in biological parameters that may translate into clinically significant health benefits. For example, diminished inflammatory response and improved immune functioning. And then these are some statements of what we think is happening sort of psychologically that produce these benefits. So metacognitive awareness. Metacognitive means thinking about thinking, a fairly sophisticated process that us human beings are able to do. The ability to view one's own thoughts and emotions as passing mental events rather than to identify with them or believe them to be accurate representations of reality. And that's sometimes called intimate detachment. So just because we think it doesn't make it so, right? Our brains have the capacity to imagine and think up all kinds of things. We have all kinds of thoughts, but they're not necessarily always true, although we may assume they are. And then also exposure. So attending to our experiences in a non-judgmental and open manner leads to a desensitization, less reactivity. So distressing thoughts, sensations, and emotions that would otherwise be avoided because we think they're too upsetting become less distressing by just simply acknowledging that they are present in this moment. And accompanying that is sort of the understanding or knowledge that whatever's present now is surely going to change in the future, sooner or later. So, the final kind of remarks here. This is what mindfulness as a practice offers us, a new way of being in relationship to what is already present. Not as an escape route, but as a way of being more in touch with our humanity, including our creativity, our resourcefulness, and our compassion. And the last of the human freedoms to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So that's what it's about. That's how it is conceived of by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And so what we're going to now do is move to what I consider a really good introductory meditation practice. So many of you have been exposed to this before. It is called the counting breath meditation. And in the counting breath, that counting of breaths becomes the anchor, the thing that we choose to pay attention to. Okay? So, we'll come back to the posture in a minute. But in the counting breath, you're going to focus your attention on your breathing just as it is. So you're not trying to alter your breath in any way. Just notice it. Pay attention to it. Okay? They may change as the exercise goes along. You may find you're taking deeper breaths, but we're not trying to force that to happen. So when we begin, you'll just simply count your breaths. So one inhale, exhale counts as 1. Inhale, exhale is 2. Inhale, exhale 3, and so on. So you're going to count your breaths up to 10. Then you count backwards, back to 1. And that's all there is to it. So for the entire practice, you're going to be counting to 10 and backwards back to 1 and starting over. Now, your mind will wander. So you're not doing it wrong when you notice your mind wanders. That's just what happens. As soon as you can, you notice your mind wandered away from counting your breaths. You might be curious, well, where did my mind go off to? Just kind of note that. But try not to get carried away down that stream of thought. Instead, gently refocus yourself on your counting. You may lose count. If you do, that's fine too. Just start over at 1. It's not a big deal at all. Okay? So, now let's talk a little bit about our meditation posture. So we sit with both feet flat on the floor. Spine will be erect, so you're not slumped over, but neither do you want to be tense. Your hands will be with the palms facing upward, and you can rest your palms on your thighs, or you can cup them in front of you in your lap. Your face will point forward, and ideally you'll close your eyes. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, then find a boring place on the wall or the floor, someplace that will be least distracting for you. Now we say that we are sitting in a posture of dignity. So sit with dignity. In just a few minutes, we'll begin. Now, I always say, I've introduced the counting breath. If you have come to this with past experience in other forms of meditation and you prefer another form, that's always fine. You can do any practice you wish. The counting breath is simply a suggestion for today. Okay? So, we will have about 12 minutes of meditation time. At the end of that time, I'll ring these little bells to let you know that it is now time to end the meditation and return your attention to this room. Okay? So go ahead and assume your meditation posture. Close your eyes, and when you're ready, begin to focus on your anchor. Okay, so let's make sure everybody is awake with us. All right, so before we wrap up, let's take just a few minutes to see if you have any questions or comments, just to debrief this a little bit. Hopefully you'll feel free. Usually your questions or comments will help others too if you have anything. Yes. Yes, is it expected that you would still be aware of things happening around you like noises in the room? Absolutely. Absolutely. So sometimes they may be distracting. And if they do, that's just kind of part of it. That's just another opportunity to practice. You know, I noticed that. Maybe it's a little irritating. Okay, let me see if I can let that go and just refocus myself on my anchor. What if you fall asleep a little bit? Well, so practicing meditation is probably most of the time very relaxing for people. It's not always, but it usually is. And so you may find that you fall asleep, particularly if you're kind of sleep deprived and your body is needing rest, you may fall asleep. So that's all right. Some people actually use meditation at the end of the day to kind of help them relax their minds. You know, if you're having trouble kind of calming that busy monkey mind at the end of the day, it is a way to kind of settle your mind and prepare for sleep. So, you know, it's not necessarily the aim of what we're doing here, but if it happens, it's normal. Yes.
I deal with constant pain in my neck.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that comes, and I'm thinking, well, I realize that my neck hurts, but I don't realize it so much when I'm doing something else. So is the thing to do just say, yes, my neck hurts, but I'm going to keep counting my breaths?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. Dealing with some chronic pain issues. And it is absolutely true that our minds have trouble focusing in more than one thing at a time. So often people who have chronic pain will say, if I've really got myself focused and engaged in something, I just don't notice it as much. It doesn't necessarily go away, but I'm just not paying attention to it. So a similar thing can happen during the meditation practice. You become aware of it. So it is one of those things that you acknowledge, this is the reality of this moment. Yes, my neck hurts, but my intention is to focus my attention on your breathing or whatever you've chosen. And so it may be the kind of thing you do again and again and again, but that's the practice. Absolutely. Okay, what else? Good questions. Anything else today? All right, we had a 2-week break. Now we're back on schedule, so glad to be back with you too. All right, well, why don't we say then we'll bring this session to a close, and we'll be doing this now every Wednesday noon.